Hello again. This story is questioning corporate involvement in GNOME development. This story seemed to be a little bit evidence-free from my take. The GNOME developer and Emily Gonya seemed to have a particular position that a certain big Red Hat company was having too much control over the GNOME project. And yeah, she didn't really seem to provide much evidence about that. So for me, this was a bit of a non-story.
Yes, from that point of view, it wasn't a non-story. I mean, it was just your typical mailing list firefight that breaks out on distribution mailing list all over the world, and I didn't have any interest in that whatsoever, except that it had one profound fact that put a whole pile of things into perspective for me. And that was that 70% of GNOME's development happens because of Red Hat paid developers. One of the things that surprised me when GNOME 3 came along is Fedora unconditionally used it. You know, anyone who's used GNOME 3 would probably find that, well, at least quite a few of us who use GNOME 3 find that a surprising position to take. And for example,
that was the one that got rid of the start menu thing.
Yes. And for example, Debian's reaction to GNOME 3 has been to move to XFCE4, and that is certainly not the reaction from the GNOME 3 developers, but that is, I'd say, the dominant reaction from most people who see GNOME 3. That's what you see. And of course, the other thing I knew about is that System D, most of the development on Hat, comes from paid Red Hat developers. And being a Debian developer and on the Debian mailing list, there is these two systems have created an enormous amount of pain for Debian because no one likes them. System D comes with some nice features, but is basically shipped in one large tarball, and GNOME 3 was disliked simply because some people dislike the UI. Although there are other good reasons, it's also much bigger, which meant that Debian's NetInst and what have you distributions now have trouble fitting when they use GNOME 3. Right. It insists on using the 3D acceleration path. If you don't have, which means that small machines don't have it, that's another problem. It's also a lot slower than GNOME 2, and Debian's just had its port of Mate completed, yep. And one of the reactions to that is, thank God I can use Mate, and guess what? That means I don't have to use System D because GNOME 3 is tied in deeply to System D.
Well, is it tied in deeply, or is it tied in for convenience? So from my memory, it was all of the power control stuff was done using System D.
And its replacement for Console Kit. And
well, Console Kit needed to die.
Yes, whatever. It did mean that you had to pull in all of System D, and the thing that suddenly dawned on me is what all these things are developed by a few guys that are probably at the very least sitting in the same IRC channel, if not in the same room, talking over petitions. And this is why what we were struggling with was in fact a direction that Fedora has taken and stuck in the... Because I never realised that 70% of GNOME's stuff was done by Red Hat. So GNOME is in fact now a Red Hat project designed to deliver what Red Hat believes is a nice user interface for Red Hat machines. Right. And I have no problem with that. I mean, if you're going to do 70% of the work, then...
If they're ponying up money.
That's right, that's fine. It's just that I didn't realise. I always envisaged it as a reaction to KDE3 done by a whole pile of army of open source volunteers. And clearly that's not the case.
Yeah, but I think, the other side of it is that most of the people in the project are unpaid volunteers. It's just the output is heavily weighted in terms of Red Hat.
Well, yeah, I think there's something like 25% of the people in the project are Red Hat, and 70% of the work gets done by them. Isn't that the...
Yeah, it was pretty close to that, yeah. 70% are unpaid developers, so presumably that means outside of Red Hat, but 25% of the contributions from Red Hat.
So I had no sympathy for Emily's position. You know, it's an open source project. If you don't like how it's run, fork it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you know, she's doing. If she's got a particular view and she wants to change that, she's put herself in election for the committee that runs the project. I think that's also an acceptable thing, rather than.
Oh yeah.
She doesn't like it and she's trying to change it.
So that's basically all I have to say. It was a singularly uninteresting story politically.
Yeah.
I don't know why. In fact, most of the stories in LWN this week were light, so I suspect it was a slow news week.
It did garner a heck of a lot of comments.
Yes, but it's about GNOME 3 Fedora and a political fight. I mean...
Right, so, because all Linux developers hate GNOME because that changed on them? Like, I use GNOME.
Well, if you read the comments, quite a few of it, you would have thought they would have given up by now, consisted of GNOME bashing. I mean, seriously, boys, get over it.
Is there much system debashing in there?
No. Well, it was a GNOME article. If it had been system D, it would have probably gone on for twice as long.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my main issue with all of these things is that the threshold for contributing to these things, not only is it quite high, but it changes. Like 5 years ago, all you needed to know was C and do GTK. These days, it's all XML and JavaScript, and just everything changes.
Yeah, but that doesn't surprise me. Many years ago, back when Red Hat was release 7 or release 6 or something or other, and I adapted it Anaconda so I could distribute my own CDs. With my own custom install, and that involved delving into Anaconda, which was at the time written in Python, I believe still is. And it was a nightmare. It was just this one huge ball of spaghetti. Anyway, they moved to Red Hat EL and started demanding $3,000 a year for you to use it, and so I moved to Debian. And then I had to do the same trick with Debian. I came across the Debian installer, which is nowhere near as pretty, but I can tell you what, code-wise, it is as clean, it's beautiful compared to Anaconda. Anaconda is what you'd expect a large people who are just paid to turn out code to look like. And what you're telling me is that GNOME is this huge ball too. And guess what? System D has been criticised because it is this huge ball.
Yeah, but I think your user interface is always going to be like that, because you want to do 100 things in a consistent way. And the only way to do that is to have a big ball of 100 things that all link up with the same thing. But my inability to be able to contribute to these projects is because everything changes so often.
You'd have no trouble contributing to Mate. I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Or XSCE, or any of them, they're still there. And in fact, many of us use it.
Yeah, but
because they are faster.
I think it's the rejection of the traditional toolkits and always jumping onto the latest and greatest thing, which, you know, as a developer, there's no point learning how to do these things because it's going to change in next week. That's my essential problem with GNOME. Any questions or comments?
Jeez,
right.
That was bloody inspirational.
Yeah.
You got the blood flowing there, didn't it?
I phone calls to leave the room and everything.